The reason you need to write in sonata form is because you can't understand the music unless you really dive into the development section. And a sonata form, what that is, it is your theme, your main melody. You develop that melody in the middle, and then you have a recapitulation. And the sonata form is the one way to understand, to be able to even fathom your music, to be able to fathom the potential of a melody. You have to be able to see what a melody can do, and you can't do that until you get to your development section. And the sonata form is not even about the theme, it's about the development section. The development section is classical music's guitar solo. You have a good song, you have a chorus in that song, then you have a guitar solo, then you get back to the chorus again. This is the old school way of doing it, because as you start flushing out, developing your melody, you see what it can and can't do. When you stagger certain voices on top of each other, you have a motive of your melody, or like re-emphasizing over and over again. You start to see its bounds, and you start to also see it's like where you can take it to. Each melody you have is virtually a seed. It is like a strand of DNA that eventually creates the whole person, the whole human, the whole piece. And the development section is grueling. It is humbling because you have to actually do everything. You have to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It means you have to delete a shit ton of music you just wrote. It means you have to actually listen for what the next voice could be, because there will be a certain, not just merely tonal momentum, there is a certain contrapuntal momentum that builds, a certain melodic momentum that arises out of the counterpoint, even if it's not taken over by one specific voice. And in doing this, you have to adhere to your main melody. Whether you present it in motives or you give it the whole thing, it is, in some sense, that is the bound, that is the genetic material for your sonata, so to speak. And it's not that you're writing a sonata, but it's that you're using the form. The sonata form is a hero's journey. You have the hero at the start of the journey, the development is the journey, and then the end is you see what is fully manifest. And you're almost missing out if you don't indulge yourself in a sonata form, because you must learn on all levels how to compose. You must learn how to modulate. It means modulate motivically, modulate even if it's just block chords, modulate your theme. And the thing about modulation is you come to a new key and you represent your melody again, but it doesn't mean you have to do it in those same intervals, the same intervals you use in your main key. You might write the same melody, but some of the intervals might be staggered in a different way. You're starting on something else. You're not starting your same melodic trajectory from the root. You're going to a different key, and say you're starting it on the fifth, or you're starting on the third of that key, but still the same kind of melodic architecture. The first time you play your melody, your arpeggiation below is probably going to be pretty clear. Your melody is going to be clear. It's going to be relatively precise. But when you get into the development section, and you'll notice I'm talking a lot about development section. That's the purpose of the sonata form, is to really, it's almost like you're doing a damn lab report. You're dissecting this melody to see everything it can possibly do. But you're revealing what you find out it can do. You reveal what is relevant, what you found out about this melody in the development section. If this seems a bit like aggressive, like I've always had this idea, on YouTube, there's a bunch of music theory nerds, and I've always wondered what it would be like if someone could talk about music theory, but it's like not like some nerd, some dork in a room. It's like, imagine like Andrew Tate talking about music theory. Music theory needs to be less nerdy. We had guys like Beethoven, we had Wagner, we had Leonard Bernstein. These guys had the knowledge of nerds, but they were not nerds. Because classical music has become this very almost gay kind of thing. And it's like, it's not let's make classical music great again. It doesn't mean we have to do all this violins anymore. We don't have to do pianos anymore. Of course we will, but it's going to evolve. There's going to be electronics. There still is going to be that traditional thing, but we're obviously evolving. We're in a certain development section right now, literally in physical reality. So by the time you're through developing your melody, you get to the recapitulation where you show it off again. You show it off back in your home key again, but this time you take everything you've learned from your development section, every way you flushed it out, and you do take what is the most relevant, you come to grasp what is the primary emotive point, subject it has, and you're able to show that in clarity again as you showed it at clarity at the start. But the first time you play the subject, melody, theme, whatever, you have a certain innocence about it. You go through the trial, the crucifixion of development, and then by the end, you have a more adult form of the melody. You will probably have different chords underneath it. Even if it is the same tonality, you might have extended chords. You might arpeggiate it a little more sophisticatedly, even if it is concise and has clarity again. But this is the point I'm trying to get across. The sonata form is an exercise for you. It is not only an intellectual exercise of composing. You have to see it then more than that. And that's where people get stuck. They think it's so intellectual. Oh, it's so old school. That's why people think classical music is gay. It's truly a spiritual thing to take a melody you've created, you resonate with. If you pull a melody out of your ass, of course you might take influences, but if you pull a melody out of your ass, that came from somewhere in you. And what does it mean? Do you know what it means? Well, I say you can't know what it means till you've done the sonata form, till you show it in the most innocent light, then you take it through modulation, counterpoint, chopping it up, extending it into new places, reharmonizing it. You go out through all of that, and then you have the resurrection, which is the recapitulation. And it's almost this video comes across as very abstract, very vague almost, because what I'm describing has to be experienced personally. It has to be experienced by you doing the work on your MIDI grid or on your score paper. You have to see these relationships, and that is the magic of being a composer. It's because your audience is going to hear the effect, your piece or whatever, but you're the only one who can really see the inner workings. You're going to have a better analytical perspective than even the theorists who are going to look at you 100 years from now. And it's not all music theory, because you begin to see what intervals have certain spiritual meanings. And some of that is subjective. The 1-5 relationship has something to do with the equilibrium state of the Tao. The major second is like the Exodus in the Bible. The major third is a masculine hero figure. The perfect fourth is a certain social communion. The sixth is like a certain feminine. Imagine what Mary had to go through giving up her son. And the major seventh it can be a lot of things. I see it as the crucifixion. It can be Christ's resurrection too. And notice I'm using a lot of biblical metaphors to describe this, but you don't even have to see that biblically. And you will come to see this more than that. And it goes a lot further than just what intervals, and it takes your specific melody. You will see how your different melodies and your counter melodies and your counterpoint jump off of each other, and what do they mean? In the same way that, like, comparing the root to the major second, I'm like, the major second is an exodus. It's like a certain melody starting here, and then you modulate it up, and you add some embellishing notes. What is that? Is that Israel going through all the bad kings and then getting to the good kings? Is it the ups and downs in the life of King David? Does it represent that contradictory nature, which is again also goes back into the churn of the Tao, the equilibrium of the Tao? And a lot of it becomes metaphysical. You see reality in the sonata form. When you play your subject at one octave and you play it one octave up, you do start to begin to see the fractal nature of being. And this is why I recommend the Sonata Form even more so. But it's not musical. You begin to see in your life, say that melody represents something in your life, and you take that melody to the next octave. You harmonize it with a counter melody. What is that counter melody in your real life? I love exercising, okay? I love doing cardio. I love going on long runs. What if that's a melody? And then another melody harmonizing with that is like, now I go to the gym, now I lift weights. But the act of composing has revealed more to me about the nature of being than anything I've ever done else personally. So don't sleep on the Sonata Form. Let's make music great again. So thank you, boys. And if you have anything else you'd like me to speak about, please leave a comment because I actually have time to answer your questions. And I would love to. See you.